Hello, folks, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I am 16-Bit, and I got a good show for you this week. I'll be talking about Reggie's new teaching position, as well as Nintendo's recent Direct, and we'll be celebrating the Sega Dreamcast 20th anniversary. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and we'll be right back after this. All right, folks, and we're back. And our first topic is, it's pretty damn funny. So, as you guys know, this last weekend, Astral Chain came out for the Nintendo Switch. And so far, everything seems to be pretty good with it. The critical response to it was pretty good. Gamers seem to like it. Overall, everyone just seems to be happy with the game. Except for a few people. And those are entirely people who don't like that it's exclusive on the Switch. And so some people have been asking as to why it's not on the PS4 and the Xbox One. Well, some brave soul decided to tweet out to Hideki Kamiya about why it's not on the PS4. Now, if you know anything about Hideki Kamiya, it's that he's one of the most shit-posting game developers on Twitter. The guy loves to be snarky as hell, and it's why I myself and many others love him, even though he's banned me. It's a long story. So someone decided to go on Twitter and they asked him the following, and I quote, "Why don't you bring Astral Chain to PS4? Do you hate PlayStation?" And Kamiya's response was, "Well, why not Mario, Zelda, and Metroid? Do you hate PlayStation? I don't know. I'm just a developer. Why don't you ask my publisher investor, Nintendo?" This is why I love Kamiya. He's so blunt and just basically likes to tell people off. But I don't think a lot of people realize the reason why Nintendo and Platinum Games have a good relationship right now. It entirely has to do with Bayonetta 2. For those who don't know, initially when Platinum Games wanted to do a sequel to Bayonetta, Sega was completely on board with it, but then they decided to pull out, and so Platinum went to various publishers trying to pitch the game. Rumor has it that two of those publishers was Microsoft and Sony. Supposedly Microsoft had no interest in a sequel to Bayonetta, but they were interested in a new IP, which became Scalebound. And Sony had no interest in it because they felt it didn't fit on their console. but take that with a grain of salt. That's supposedly a rumor. Anyway, Platinum went to Nintendo. Nintendo was perfectly on board with it. And because of that, we got Bayonetta 2 and as well as a whole bunch of other games. Wonderful 101, Star Fox Zero, and of course Astral Chain, just to name a few. So that's why they have a very good relationship. Of course, not every game Platinum puts out is an exclusive to Nintendo. So, I mean, case in point, Nier Automata. But overall, the two have a very good relationship. And hey, because of that, not only did we get Bayonetta 2, we're also getting Bayonetta 3. So let's just hope we eventually get Wonderful 101 on the Switch. That's all I'm asking, please. All right, next topic. All right, this story is actually pretty cool. So Reggie fils-amie, as many of you remember, back in April, he officially retired from Nintendo after 15 years of service. And it seems that, however, since retiring, he's found a new calling in life, and that is at his old alma mater of Cornell University. It was announced that he's going to be their inaugural leader in residence. Basically, he's going to be teaching young students leadership skills. Honestly, I can't think of anyone better to do something like that. That's really up Reggie's alley. I mean, think about it. The man ran Nintendo of America for 15 years. He was responsible for the success of the Wii and the DS and countless memes that came out of it. I mean, I can't think of anyone else who is perfect to teach leadership to students. Though I guarantee you what's going to happen is that Cornell's admissions are going to go through the roof because people are going to submit admissions just to be in Reggie's class. You know it. I mean, come on. Some people are kind of like that. I will say this, though. If you are a student of Cornell or you're going to be a student of Cornell and you're going to be one of his students, what you got to do is you got to start a tradition where anytime he calls you up to the front of the class, you have to say, "My body is ready." Please do it for the sake of the internet, because honestly, everyone will love it. It'll be one of the funniest things out there. So I wish him the best of luck. And remember, students, that his name is Reggie. He's about kicking ass, he's about taking names, and he's about making games. All right, next topic. All right, so this one is sad. Ikumi Nakamura, for those who don't know, she was the creator and art director at Tango Gameworks. She worked on The Evil Within 1 and 2 and the upcoming Ghostwire Tokyo. Well, unfortunately, it came out this past week that she officially resigned from Tango. She said on Twitter, and I quote, "After 9 years as creative director and art director at Tango and ZeniMax, I felt there is one of ends of the journeys. I learned from the talented people I've worked with and I respect. Contact me if anyone wants to work with me." That's a damn shame. Evil Within was pretty good. And Ghostwire looked interesting, though what sucks is that she was like the best part of Bethesda's E3 conference. I mean, everyone there is just standing in one spot with their hands at their side and saying, "Our game is good, buy it." And here comes Ikumi Nakamura jumping around on stage and having fun with the presentation. Her and Doom Eternal were basically the highlights of the entire press conference. So I hope she'll find something soon. Personally, I think Konami should get into contact with her and get her to do a new Silent Hill. But even if that never happens, I look forward to seeing what she'll make next. All right, folks, I'm going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this. All right, and we're back. And this next segment, you guys definitely know what I'm going to be talking about, and that's the Nintendo Direct. That's right, this past week, Nintendo had a Direct that was mostly focused on games coming out in the later half of the year, but it also announced stuff in 2020. So you had a good mixture of stuff and a good amount of announcements, like stuff that honestly I didn't even expect to be announced. Of course, first and foremost was Overwatch. Now that was kind of speculated because about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, there was a case for an Amazon listing for a Nintendo Switch case with an Overwatch logo on it, and a lot of people were speculating that the game would come out for the Switch. So it's official. It's coming out on October 15th. Personally, I don't really care because I'm not really into Overwatch. I played it a free weekend once, I think back in 2017, and to be quite frank, I was not impressed. It's basically Team Fortress 2 with prettier graphics. Yeah, I said it. I don't care. Anyway, moving on. Luigi's Mansion 3 looks really awesome. I like the fact that it's taking place in one building and not like Dark Moon, which took place in various different buildings. What's really cool about this one is that it's going to include a multiplayer mode where up to 8 players competing against each other to capture the most ghosts. Looks a lot of fun, and that'll be coming out on October 31st, Halloween. Next up was, of course, Super Kirby Clash, which is a free-to-start game. It's available now. I haven't played it, and it looks all right. I can't really tell you about that one. They also announced that Trials of Mana will be coming out on April 24th next year. So that one actually looks interesting. It's a remake of the third Mana game, which is Seiken Densetsu 3, which you can actually play on the Switch already because it was released on the collection of Mana, which I have, but I haven't actually played. I haven't really played the game yet. But you can go check that out now, or you can wait for the remake. Anyway, next up was Return of the Obra Dinn, which looks like a puzzle adventure game, and it has an interesting graphic style. Haven't played it yet, but it looks interesting. That'll be coming out in fall 2019. They then announced Little Town Hero, which is a new game by Game Freak. It's an RPG, looks a lot of fun, and that'll be coming out on October 16th. Of course, the next bit of news was entirely Smash Brothers related. Banjo-Kazooie is now available. You can get him on Super Smash Bros. So go check him out. I was playing a few matches with him, and pretty good. They actually did a very, very good job with translating a lot of his moves into Smash Bros. It's really cool. Of course, they also announced the next Smash Bros. DLC character, who will be Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury. Hell yes! It's about time one of the SNK characters got in there. Though, what I really liked was how they introduced him, where it was like they did several SNK games, each trying to grab the letter, and they can't grab it, and eventually it falls down, and Terry Bogard catches it. Really cool, really funny. Go check it out. They also announced that more DLC fighters will be coming after that. So you got a whole bunch of stuff to look forward to in 2019 and 2020. There was also more announcements regarding Smash Brothers. They had after the Direct, they did a whole thing with Banjo-Kazooie showing off him and the Spiral Mountain stage. And they also announced new Mii Fighter costumes. This included Team Rocket, Proto Man, Zero, and Sans from Undertale. Seriously, I fucking hate that game. Anyway, moving on. They also talked about Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, which will be coming out on September 20th. And that looks really awesome. It has a whole bunch of neat features. They're also going to be releasing a Link amiibo for the game, as well as it's also going to be compatible with other Legend of Zelda amiibos. So definitely going to check that out. Dragon Quest XI S is also coming out September 27th. So go check that out. If you've never played a Dragon Quest game, I highly recommend it. I played Dragon Quest XI last year when it was released on the PS4, and it's a fantastic game. What's really cool about this is that they're including a whole bunch of new features, orchestrated music, new side quests, as well as the 16-bit mode from the 3DS version, which is awesome. Really cool. Also, Tokyo Mirage Sessions Encore coming to the Nintendo Switch on January 17th. I never actually got to play the original game. So it's a damn shame, but apparently this version's going to include a whole bunch of new features. So definitely looking forward to that. The big surprise for me, though, was Deadly Premonition 2. That just came right the hell out of nowhere, which is kind of fitting for the series. If you've never played Deadly Premonition, it's one of those batshit insane games that it's so crazy that it's incredibly entertaining. I had the original for the 360, and it's so good. So the fact that it's getting a sequel, hell yes, that's coming out in 2020. The original game is now available on the Switch right now, and I highly recommend you go check it out. Apparently, it's also having some audio issues, but don't worry. The developers said that they were going to release a patch very soon to sort of fix those problems. Next up was, of course, Divinity Original Sin 2 coming to the Switch. Actually, it's now available. So I've never played the first game or the second, so I can't tell you if it's any good, but it's now available. Next up was an announcement that I was really surprised, and I'm glad it's coming out, and that's Doom 64 is coming to the Nintendo Switch on November 22nd. Hell yes. It's actually the only Doom game I've never actually played. I've played all other Doom games except for that one, so I'm really looking forward to it. They also announced Rogue Company is coming to the Switch. I've never heard of it. Looks all right. Pokemon Sword and Shield has a lot of new features. They went over the trainer customization options, which looks really cool. They announced that there's going to be campsites that you could visit and sort of interact with your own Pokemon. And you can also feed your Pokemon, like cook for them and feed them. It looks interesting. That'll be coming out November 15th, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm, of course, going to get Sword, because I always go with the blue variant. This next bit of news was a bit of a surprise, because after a year of bitching from gamers, Nintendo has finally announced that Super Nintendo games are available on the Switch. You can get them right now. There's over 20 games, including Zelda: A Link to the Past, Mario World, Super Metroid, Star Fox. The one that really surprised me, though, was Stunt Race FX, because to my knowledge, there was only 2 Super FX games that only ever got like virtual console releases, and that was Star Fox and Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. I don't think Stunt Race FX ever got a virtual console release. So to see that I actually put it out there, I'm grateful for that. Also, as you guys remember, a few weeks ago, I talked about the Super Nintendo controller that was kind of leaked. Well, they confirmed it. It's now available, and it's $30. You only get one controller. I think they learned their lesson after last year when they put out the NES controller 2-pack that was like $60. Most people are like, what the hell? They then next announced that Tetris 99 is getting an update, version 2.0, and it'll include Invictus mode that will only be available to those who got Maximus ranking. So I always really like Tetris 99. It's a fun game. In fact, you know who also likes it? Alexei Pajitnov, the game's creator. He has said several times that he himself has played online. So if you're playing it right now, then hey, who knows? Maybe you're playing against him. They also talked about Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, Tokyo 2020. That's coming out November 5th. Honestly, never really cared for any of those games. Actually, I've never really played any of those games. So, Demon X Machina is coming out September 13th. So, this upcoming week. There's a demo now available. Looks really awesome. It's a mech game. So, looking really cool. Next up was Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. This kind of came out of nowhere. But yeah, Jedi Knight 2 is out. Coming out September 24th. That looks really cool. I remember playing it a few times on someone's PC. Someone I used to know. They had the game, and I used to play it on their PC. I remember we crashed it once. It was a fun game. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Complete Edition coming out October 15th. Looks really impressive looking that they even got the fact that they got the game on the Switch running, and then the fact that it looks good. It's shocking. Assassin's Creed Rebel Collection, which includes Assassin's Creed 4 and Assassin's Creed Rogue, which, if I remember correctly, that was the Assassin's Creed game for the Vita, right? I think that was it. It's kind of a shame because that was like supposed to be its exclusive, and it's kind of sad to see that its exclusive is now on the Switch. They also talked about Dauntless, which is a free-to-play game. Looks all right. Just Dance 2020 is coming out November 5th. I don't care. Grid Autosport, September 19th. Don't care. Farming Simulator 20, December 3rd. Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch, September 20th. That one looks awesome. I never got to play the original. I wanted to get that collector's edition. That looked really nice. And then then there was a problem, and it mostly went to scalpers on eBay. Like that really sucked. NBA 2K20 is now available. Call of Cthulhu coming out on October 8th. The Outer Worlds coming soon. Devil May Cry 2, September 19th. You know, I played Devil May Cry 2 last year because I have it on the PS3. I'm going to be quite frank, it's not very good. But it's not the worst Devil May Cry game because that still belongs to the DMC reboot. So, yeah, it's not really good. It's still not good. Vampire, October 30th, 29th. It's coming out. Of course, the two big announcements they ended off with were Animal Crossing New Horizons, which will be coming out on March 20th, 2020. That one actually looks really awesome. You can go visit other people's islands and all that kind of stuff. It looks really cool, so definitely looking forward to that. And the last bit of news was Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition coming out in 2020. Yes, it's really cool to see that they're not just porting it. It's not like the 3DS version where it was just a port. What they're doing is they're going back and they're actually cleaning the game up. And the one thing I noticed is that they completely revamped the character models. They look completely different from the original. And I think that that's a good thing, because if you look at the original model, I saw on Twitter someone did a comparison. And the original character models haven't really aged very well. Of course, that's simply because that game was really pushing the Wii to its absolute limits. So there was a lot that they couldn't really do. And so it's good to see that they're going back. They're cleaning up some of the textures and character models. I'm looking really forward to that. I never got the 3DS version, but it looks super awesome. So that was it for this Nintendo Direct. There was a ton of stuff, ton of interesting announcements. Overall, a lot of good stuff. Anyway, this segment has gone on for far too long. So I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. All right, folks, and we're back. And many of you probably noticed that the day I'm uploading this is a very special day in gaming because today actually marks the 20th anniversary of the Sega Dreamcast. It was launched on September 9th, 1999 in the United States. I think in Europe as well. I'm not really sure on that one. But it's kind of crazy to think that the Dreamcast is 20 years old. And so I thought I would dedicate an entire segment to talk about my recollections of the Dreamcast, kind of like what I did with the Game Boy and the Genesis. And so I got my Dreamcast first back in 2002, and by that point, the Dreamcast was completely dead, and most game stores were trying to get rid of them. And so I remember going there with my mom, and they had an entire bin of shrink wrapped Dreamcast because back then, what they would do is they would take they didn't put them in a box. They would just shrink wrap them with the controller and all the necessary cables, and then they would just put them in this bin. And I remember seeing a whole bunch of them and just asking my mom for one, and it was $30 for a Dreamcast. And so I got that plus two games, which was Sonic Adventure and Crazy Taxi 2. And Sonic Adventure, I'm very mixed on because I like some aspects of it. I like the Sonic levels and the tail levels and the Amy levels, but I can't. And was it EO102? I think it was. But I could never stand the Knuckles and Big the Cat levels. They were just the most annoying things in the entire game. Of course, that was also a game that I had to basically keep the console running for because when I first got my Dreamcast, I didn't know I needed to buy the VMU with it. So basically, I found out quickly that I had to leave the console running overnight so I could then go back and play it again the next day. The other game was, of course, Crazy Taxi 2, and that game is fantastic. I mean, the first two Crazy Taxi games are absolutely great. Really good stuff. I kind of wish that, because I know Sega put out like an HD version of Crazy Taxi 1, and I kind of wish they would do that again because Crazy Taxi is just a great series. Music is all right. It's 90s, so I mean, you're not going to get like really good stuff, but I mean, it was kind of mediocre, but the game itself is absolutely fantastic. Of course, I always loved the bicycle cheat in the original Crazy Taxi, where you select the character and you just hit L and R at the exact same time, and you unlock the bicycle. I always loved that. And of course, I eventually started branching out into other games and discovered other stuff. One that I've discovered that has become my absolute favorite is Skies of Arcadia. That game is one of the best, most overlooked games I've ever played. Seriously, Skies of Arcadia is absolutely fantastic. I mean, the gameplay is great, the music is excellent, the story is incredibly well written. One thing I always really liked about it was just the exploration of it. The fact that you can just fly around this world looking for different islands and continents and such. It plays exactly like an old school RPG. In fact, I think the person who produced it was the same person who produced like the Genesis Phantasy Star games. So it shares some elements of that series. But what's also really cool about it is the battles. The fact that you have two different types of battles. You have your standard, RPG battle with your parties standing around the enemy. And then you have the ship battles. Whew. This is probably the coolest thing about it is the fact that it's basically turn-based combat, but it's set up in rounds where basically you assign the characters to different duties. So one character is assigned to a turret, one is assigned to a torpedo, the other one is assigned to heal the ship. It's so well done. It's such a great game. It also had a GameCube port in 2003, and it's pretty good. It includes all the stuff from the original game, plus it adds more. The only downside is that the music's not as good as it is in the original. So, but still, definitely go check out Skies of Arcadia. Another one, of course, I always loved was the Marvel vs. Capcom games. Absolutely fantastic stuff. In fact, Capcom's fighters on the Dreamcast are absolutely fantastic. I mean, you have Street Fighter 3, you had Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2, you had Rival Schools. You had a lot of good stuff on the Dreamcast. In fact, Capcom was like one of those companies that basically stuck with Sega through thick and thin. Like they basically, like, even when the Saturn wasn't doing very well, they still put out a lot of like games on the system. Stuff like X-Men Children of the Atom, Street Fighter Alpha 1 and 2, Night Warriors, Darkstalkers Revenge, just a lot of good stuff on there. And then on the Dreamcast, they continued. Again, stuff like, again, like I said, Marvel's Capcom 1 and 2, fantastic. In fact, what makes them perfect is that they were both Sega Naomi games, and the Dreamcast, of course, was built around the Sega Naomi hardware. So what you get are games that are arcade perfect. They're just absolutely very well done, and I think they're the definitive versions of each game. Even when they put out the HD versions of Marvel's Capcom 1 and 2, it still was not as good as the Dreamcast. So definitely go check that out. Of course, there's also Power Stone. I can't believe I almost forgot Power Stone. Power Stone is great. Oh, man, I talked about it a few weeks ago. Power Stone 1 and 2 are fantastic. Oh, Soul Calibur. So I can't believe I forgot Soul Calibur. Fantastic weapons fighting game. Still very well done. I think Soul Calibur 2 is a little bit better. But Soul Calibur 1 is still a phenomenal game. And, of course, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I always really liked. I love the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games on the Dreamcast. I mean, sure, the PS1 versions were pretty good, but I think the Dreamcast versions were just top-notch. They looked fantastic. The controls were great. Of course, that's another series that's turning 20 years old this month. It's crazy to think that it's that old now. There's also, of course, Shenmue. I can't forget that. But honestly, I never really cared for Shenmue. It just never did anything for me. It's one of those games where either you like it or you hate it. And for me, it's not that I hate it. It's that it's just not my type of game. It's too slow, and a lot of it's very tedious. Especially when you get to when you have to get a job and you're working the docks, and you know exactly where I'm going with this with the forklift. It can be very tedious, and I can understand what Yu Suzuki was going with, but it just didn't do anything for me. But hey, some people love it, and I just can't fault them for that, you know? Anyway, it's a shame that the console had to go down the way it did. A lot of it could be blamed on Sega's past basically biting them in the ass. They were still reeling financially from the failures of their previous systems, the Sega CD, the 32X, the Saturn. And on top of that, you also had the looming shadow of the PlayStation 2. From the moment the Dreamcast made its US debut at E3 1999, the PS2 was already there. And the hype for it was already growing. I don't think there's a younger generation out there that I don't think they understand just how massive the hype for the PS2 really was. This thing was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. You had people literally camping out in front of stores waiting for this thing to get released. And it was just crazy. It was a real crazy and exciting time for gaming. People were really excited to see the PS2 coming out, and unfortunately that ate into the Dreamcast. And don't think that Sega didn't at least try. They did. The Christmas of 2000, Sega pushed for people's attention. But unfortunately, everyone was already set on getting a PS2, and they couldn't make their sales projections for Christmas that year. So unfortunately, that's why I think it was March of 2001, they officially announced that they were ending the Dreamcast. And it's a damn shame that they've been out of the console market completely since. In fact, they've been out of the console market longer than they were even in it. That's crazy to think. But there's a little bit of me that's kind of hoping that with the Sega Genesis Mini coming out, that Sega might come back to the console market, or at least be more motivated to do so. Because honestly, I think we really need them. Anyway, folks, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. right, folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. Remember that you can listen to the show both on BitChute and YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter and Gab. If you've got any questions to be answered on next week's episode, please leave them below. It's always appreciated. And until next time, I'll see you all next week. And remember that video games will never die.